I'm Dave Gerber, and I'm here to talk with you today a little bit about constructivism and social learning. When I get done, I hope you'll be able to summarize some of the major premises of constructivism and maybe identify one or two of those major contributors to constructivism. I also hope you'll be able to identify social learning opportunities in both a digital and blended classroom, develop objectives that integrate technology and pedagogy that facilitate social learning, as well as critique your own deployment of social learning within your own practice. So I want to start our discussion about constructivism by talking about some of the beliefs of Lev Vygotsky. So Vygotsky felt that knowledge traveled from social context to an individual context. So the construction of understanding results from the sharing of individual perspective for Vygotsky. He also felt that intellectual development was at its peak at the junction of practical activity and speech. Okay, he went on to explain this, that intrapersonal practical activity meets speech, the interpersonal, which is the learner as well as their culture. Okay, so that speech is that avenue for that interpersonal connection there. Vygotsky also identified that zone of proximal development, and that's the gap between what a learner can do without help and what they can do with help from a more knowledgeable other. So, in other words, social interaction between students and student peers and teachers is absolutely necessary for learners to acquire more challenging knowledge. The second constructivist I want to introduce you today is Jean Piaget. So Piaget felt that knowledge was acquired in one of two ways. It was either assimilated or it was accommodated. Okay. There's also a third option there. The learner could reject the knowledge, at which point they don't learn anything at all. Okay. All right. So let me run over these two. Assimilation is that incorporation of new information into an existing model of the world. And the world, that model doesn't have to change then if it's assimilated. Okay, so if knowledge is accommodated, it means it totally changes their viewpoint of the world. Okay, and so they change that view of the world to fit the new knowledge coming in. Okay, Piaget felt that speech or self-talk, as well as conversation with others, was one of the main avenues that this assimilation or accommodation could occur. So wouldn't it be great if we had a Lev Vygotsky machine that we could feed our traditional class into and have social learning on the other side? Well, unfortunately, we don't have that. And that means that as teachers, we have to kind of come up with some models of pulling all that together and giving students the opportunity to have those conversations with both us as teachers as well as their peers, so that they can develop that knowledge and either assimilate or accommodate it as they learn. You may recognize this model, the Sammer model. It was introduced to you earlier this week, and it has to do with your deployment of technology. Okay, and one of the goals is to not just substitute materials or augment them, but to actually move all the way down to redefinition of tasks to provide for the highest integration of technology as well as the greatest learning associated with that technology. Okay, let me give you another model here. This is Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. Let me just remind you that at the very lowest end of Bloom's taxonomy is being able to recall facts and information. Okay, and so this is the least rigorous. And then at the very top here, we have students being able to create new things based on what they've learned. Okay, now here's the important part. You cannot create if you haven't been through a phase of remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, or evaluating. Okay, it really is important that students travel through all of these levels before they get to the point where they're trying to create things, because you can't create if you don't understand the premises behind something. Okay, all right, so keep that in mind as you're putting this together. I know a lot of times when we talk about Bloom's taxonomy, our goal is to give students the most they can get out of it, and we tend to want to shoot for create. Well, keep in mind you have to go through these other levels so that you can create at the upper end of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so keep that in mind. And again, as we're creating these social interactions with students, they need some that will provide them an opportunity to remember things. They need social interaction where they can come to understand things, and they need social interaction to apply materials and show others how they're putting that together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Hey, if we put these two together, and this is something that we're seeing more and more often within the discussion surrounding these two, then those lower levels of technology integration tend to facilitate some of those lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, if we're looking to provide students with challenging curriculum, okay, we're going to have to up our technology game so that they can work at that upper end there. Now, here's the other part. Okay, I understand there are some activities that are merely substitution that do allow students to create, but for the most part, if you're moving up through that technology matrix there, you're also moving up through Bloom's taxonomy. So I hope you recognize this at the beginning of this presentation. There's 4 constructivists here, and I haven't gone over what all of them have to say about constructivism. But I hope that you'll take the opportunity to look them up and see what they had to discuss about constructivism. On this far side, we have Lev Vygotsky, who I talked about within this discussion. There's also Maria Montessori, whom I think that many of you elementary folks will recognize. If you get a chance, go back and look at some of her deployments of constructivism. You also may recognize John Dewey, who has a huge amount of writing from the early American education during the 1900s, as well as our list would not be complete in our conversation about constructivists if we didn't include Jean Piaget here. Folks, I hope. I hope. Hope you'll join me as we extend this conversation about constructivism and social learning, and how we can include that within these next few months of digital learning, and make that part of our practice and craft. Thank you.